Welcome to the Netivot Shalom Shir. We're going to talk about this week's Parsha Chayei Sarah. And the subject, what I'm going to talk about, is when we have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, to do something good. We know that we have many impediments that the Yetzer Hora puts in front of us. I'm not sure how to how to translate the word Yetzer Hora into English. I've used as negative thoughts or something, negative influence, negative power. We have been dealing with, know what the Yetzer Hora is, but for those who may not be familiar, it's that force that seems to come from within you, trying to keep you from doing something that is positive, trying to keep you from doing a mitzvah, putting impediments in your way. But there's another part of the Yetzer Hora that the Netivot Shalom is going to talk about, and it's very, very important that we understand this. And that is the attempt of the Yetzer Hora that once you have done a mitzvah, you've done what you're supposed to do, you've accomplished you've passed the test, and the Yetzer Hora comes along and tries to not only minimize that, but to show you that you really should have done that because here's collateral damage that happened because you did this test. So that, and we say the Yetzer Hora is in front of us and behind us. In front of us, trying to prevent us from doing something, and behind us to take away the feeling that we've done something good, to make it think that we've done something bad, and therefore negatively influence you so that next time you'll think twice about doing what you did. So that's the general overview of this. And to get into that, in this week's Parsha Chayei Sarah, we have to look at the first two sentences, which I have on the screen, because the first long paragraph, Netivot Shalom is going to talk about that. So the Parsha begins, Vayu Chayei Sarah. And this was the life of Sarah Imenu, Sarah, our mother. Mea Shana, 100 years. Esrim Shana, and 20 years. B'Sheva Shanim, and 7 years. Now, certainly the pasuk could have said Sarah lived 127 years. So it's going to discuss why 100 years, 20 years, and 7 years. Shnei Chayei Sarah. These are the years of the life of Sarah. That seems repetitive because the sentence began, Vayu Chayei Sarah. This is the life of Sarah. So the Shnei Chayei Sarah at the end of that sentence seems repetitive. Then the next sentence is very interesting too. It says, V'Toma Sarah b'Kiryat Arba. Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, Hebron, which is Hebron, Beretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan, in Eretz Yisrael. Vayovo Avraham, and Avraham Avinu, her husband, came, lispod Sarah, to give a hesped to eulogize Sarah, v'liv kosa, and to mourn for her, to cry over her. And you look at the word v'liv kosa, the last word of that second sentence, and you'll see that the letter chaf, I don't know if you could you see my marker as I'm going around it? The letter chaf, in fact, is smaller than the rest of the letters. The letter chaf, the word to cry for her is small. So just bear those things in mind, and I'm going to switch now to the Netivot Shalom portion and share that. So give me a moment. I get it up here. I think it's, here we are. Oh, 1 minute. Yeah, this is it. Okay. Now hopefully you'll have a different screen up there that starts Misat Sarah. You show that? It's on page Kuf Chof Ches of the book. Do you all have that screenshot now? Okay, so let's see what he says. He quotes the first a couple of sentences that we've just gone through. He says, Vayu Chayei Sarah. This was the life of Sarah, Mea Shana, 100 years, Ve'esrim Shana, 20 years, Ve'sheva Shanim, and 7 years, Shnei Chayei Sarah. These were the years of Sarah. Hine Parsha Zu Rabu Hadiktokim. Says in this parsha there seems to be many repetitions. Reish, and many questions you can ask about this. Reishis, first of all, he says, Lamna Nimnu Shnei Sarah Chayei Sarah Shlo Batziru Came Bashar Hamos. We don't find an enumeration of the life of the other mothers, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, like you do with Sarah. So why is her life enumerated this way? Od mahu kofel amru shnei Chayei Sarah. Why is the language doubled? It starts Vayu Chayei Sarah. This is the life of Sarah. It ends Shnei Chayei Sarah. These were the lives of. It repeats itself. Why is that doubled? So Rashi Perush, and Rashi interprets this. He says, "Kulan shavin latova," because they were all good. When she was 7 years old, life was good. When she was 20 years old, life was good. When she was 100 years old, and all between, all her life was good. And there's another, we're not going to get into that, but another Netivot Shalom points out that, as raises the question, how can you say they were all good? She had, she's kidnapped by Pharaoh, Avimelech. She doesn't have any children until she's 90 years old. How was her life good? And it's good because she accepted the Ratzon of Hashem. She accepted God's will. So to everything that happened, as we've said many, many times, Kol David Rachmana L'Tav Avid. Whatever God does, we know is good. So Rashi says all her life was good. Vakati Tzorach Bir, so you have to understand this. Lefi Zeh, Matam Siporo Lanu HaTorah Inyan Zeh, Shkula Shavin L'Tova, Lo Matzir Moka Bacher Kain. Okay, given Rashi's interpretation, he says the question still remains. Why does it have to, whether it's all for good or not, why does the Torah have to take the space to tell this, but it doesn't tell this about anybody else? Remember the second sentence, the last word, he cried for her, is written with a kaf that is smaller than the rest of the letters. Kaf Zehira. Kas Balatorim, and the Balatorim writes, Shu B'Shum Shelo Bocha Ela Ma'at, Lefi Shezikna Haisa. He says it's written with a small kaf because, after all, she was 127 years old. She wasn't a young lady. So because she was so old, he only cried a little bit. This also you have to understand. Why is the Torah telling this? What difference does it make to us? Whether we cried a lot or not a lot? You were supposed to learn things from everything that happens here. So what's the Torah telling us here? Uvarashi al lispod sorav livkoser kosava. Rashi on this phrase, and he goes to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. He says, Nisbacha misa Sarah Akedat Yitzak. The parsha of Chayei Sarah, which starts with the death of Sarah, is right next to the last week's parsha, which ended with the Akedat Yitzak, the binding of Isaac, the taking of Yitzchak up on the altar to offer him as a sacrifice. Why? The fee, he says, Shaydei Basora so Akedah, because of hearing about the Akedah, about what happened, she's daven bana l'shchita, that her son was almost slaughtered, ukmat lo sh'odishchat, and just barely at the last minute wasn't slaughtered. Hearing that news, porcha dishmas v'meru mesa. she died from that news. The news was so overwhelming, her soul left her, and she died right away. But Sarah Beer, and again, the Netivot Shalom says we have to understand. Madua Kasser Zos Rashi, Al Nispo L'Sor. Of course, why is Rashi telling this? Shohaya lo levar inyas bichus meisa Sarah lakedes Yitzchak b'tchilas hapasuk al v'tama Sarah. If that was the case, the Torah should have said at the very beginning, the very first sentence, that Sarah died because of hearing this news. And that's a Perusha Shel Rashi. And with the interpretation, the commentary of Rashi, Yesh lahavin eich yisaked shayidei Akedah nirgamu misa Sarah. We have to understand, how is it that from the Akedah, the death of Sarah was caused? Excuse me a moment. All right, Shomer mitzvahs, lo yada davara. We have a general principle that's put out in the book of Koheles. Somebody who's doing a mitzvah, nothing bad can happen to them. The performance of a mitzvah protects you. So yes, how can that be? How can Avraham doing this great mitzvah have brought about harm? And then he goes, he asks the Netivot Shalom, Eich efshar l'shebenisayin kodesh kazeh yatzer hora. How is it possible, given that concept, that shomer mitzvah lo yadara, you do a mitzvah, nothing bad can happen? How does it happen that out of this great mitzvah of great holiness, where both Avraham and Yitzchak were giving their life, so to speak, Avraham giving his son's life, which you'd have to think about all the years of his life, Yitzchak giving his life at age 37 because of the love of God, the Yiras Hashem. Such a holy thing, showing the emunah, the love of Hashem that both of them had. How can something bad come out of it? Not only that, but Sarah Imeinu was on a higher level than Avraham was. I mean, he was on a very high level, but she was on a higher level. Kosher Paris Rashi, as Rashi explains on the pasuk, Kol asher tomer elecha Sarah, Shema b'kola, when Sarah told Avraham to kick Hagar out with Yishmael, he didn't know what to do, and Hashem said, whatever she tells you, you got to listen to her. Lamadnu teaches us, Shohaya Avraham Tafel Sarah B'Aviv, which means that Avraham Avinu was on a lesser stage, a lower stage in prophecy than Sarah was. Vim Cain, if so, Eich Efsher Avraham Yitzchak come to B'Nisoyon, how could it be that Avraham and Yitzchak withstood this test? Bilu Sarah, Kishashama Mezeh Porchlish Pasvin Sarah, who was a higher level of Nevuah, she would die from hearing this? Doesn't make sense. We can explain it this way. Dehine anu mavakshim b'tefillah. We ask in our prayer, please remove Satan, remove the Yetzer Hora from before us and from after us. We know, we talked about the aspect of Satan before you, of Yetzer Hora before you, tried to prevent you from doing something. Yetzer Hora means Gaber al Yehudi, Kodem Asiyas Mitzvah. The strength of the negativity of the Yetzer Hora trying to keep you from doing a mitzvah, to keep you from fulfilling a command. V'kodem anisayon, libnobi menu shel yikam a mitzvah shel yamim anisayon. The job is so that you won't fulfill the mitzvah. You'll fail this test, not pass it. We see that this in fact was what was happening with Avraham Avinu with regard to this test of the Akedah. Kadisa Midrash, the Midrash tells us, Midrash Chazal tells us that Kol Tachpalosav Shel HaSatan Limnoas Avraham and Maseh HaKedah. The Satan was trying its very hardest to keep Avraham from doing the Akedah. How? He goes examples. Shebo Ilam V'Omerlo Zaken Shota Hari HaKadosh Baruch Hu Avtichacha Kibescha Kol Chazara V'Yoatu Omer Lecha V'Alei Shavlo. You foolish old man. Are you saying that God promised you that your genealogy will come from Yitzchak, and now He's telling you to go bring him up as a sacrifice? This is you're having hallucinations. Bachakach halach kmokein Yitzchak liftoso. After that, he went to Yitzchak to try to convince Yitzchak. So that's the attempts to prevent you from doing it. Now he says, there's the aspect of Satan after the deed has been done. The strength of the Yetzer Hora after you've done something. To take from you to bring you down from the high level that you've achieved by passing this test. Badash Sipur Maron Admor Beis Avraham. The Admor Beis Avraham tells a story. Achim HaKadoshim Rabbi Kodesh Rabbi Shmulka ben Nikolsburg, Rabbi Kodesh Rabbi Pinchas Padam. Those two brothers. Be'esh Higiu B'nisiatam Arishona El Rambam Hamagid HaKadosh from Ezra. Both of them came for their first visit before the Mizrich Magid. Shamagid tiar lifneim seder havodah sheyehudi. The Magid laid out before them the order in which a Jew must serve God. Eich shekam b'chatzos, borech tikun chatzos. You call it tikuni v'chol hakavonos. How you get up at chatzos laila, the middle of the night, and you have different things that you say with great kavanah, great intensity, crying over the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, saying Tillim, saying Vidui, confessing your sins to God. After that, Lomed Sha'arav, you learn Torah for a while, for a number of hours. Omar Kol Yedi Mash Lomed B'Sha'arav Benigla Uvidistar. And God counts all these things that you've learned, hidden things, and revealed things. And then after you've learned, after you've spent the rest of the night learning, all your intentions, all your good intentions, your kavanah for prayer, all the order of the prayer, you go from world to world, you go from one world to the other, olamos, Asiya, Yetzira, Barias, and Silus, these four worlds. V'lo rak shebekame b'machshavto, elahu be'emes nimtze b'chol elu halamos. Not only are you thinking that you've ascended to these different worlds, you actually you feel that you've done it. You feel that that's where you are. Bachar Kachas calls that, and after all this, im olabo oz machshava shapol mashu bavodaso. If you have a thought that you've accomplished something in your mind thinks, I've really accomplished something by what I've done. Elahu be'emes nimtze b'chol elu halom. I'm sorry, I skipped the word. Osim mikol modosu ke'ein kadru mashlichim zos la'amuka de tehuma rabba. When you have that thought, You ever thought of thinking, wow, how wonderful I was, look what I did. It's like you're taking a ball and throwing it into the depths. But if Alam owed me zeh, shidvor v'hoyu b'chavori b'diuk, sh'al seder havodah shlema. They understood that this was, those two brothers, they understood this was their avodah. V'hainu sh'asata me'achreinu, the sata that comes behind you, einu pachot misuka me'asata shlenu, is no less dangerous than the sata that comes before you. Shachar seder havodah kazu ola hakol lipo lamuka the Toma Rabbi, because even after such a great uh, accomplishing all these things, it's all going to fall away because you're thinking too much about it, about what you've done. You're praising yourself too much. And we know that the one thing God doesn't like is arrogance. We can explain here also. It says, Vayelchu yachtav, Hanizkar Parsha. I'm sorry, Gimel Pamim, 3 times are the words Vayelchu Yaktav, they went together, mentioned in this Parsha. Dine Echamer, Omer Be'ariya Kodesh, B'shtei Inyan HaKid, V'bir Inyan HaKid, to understand, the Ariya Kodesh says to understand the whole thing of the Akedah, Shoya Kedei La'aked Midas Yitzchak, Ba'Avraham. You had to connect the quality of Yitzchak to Avraham, Avraham Yitzchak, and that of Avraham to Yitzchak, meaning Shavram Idasu Ahava, Abraham's quality was love, but Kasher is Asmo im Yitzchak Midos Yira V'Gvura. He had to tie that quality to the quality of Yitzchak, which was fear of God and strength. Baldas Zeh, Kesher Yitzchak Asmo im Midas Avraham. Therefore, through that, they were tied together. And that's the only thing that gave them the power, both of them, the power to go through with what they thought they were doing. V'zeu madikasim, this is what it means, Vayachu Shem Yachtav, they went both together. Zos od adasabo, we can also explain this, but Chila, at the beginning, Kasi Vayikach B'yadu Vasar Eishus Macheles, Vayachu Shem Yachtav. First it says, Avraham took the fire and the trees, and they walked together. The Az Yada Yada, and they both knew. I'm sorry, I skipped the line. The Az Yada Rak Avram as Inir HaAkedah, but Yitzchak Dail Yada. At that point, Yitzchak didn't know why he was going. He was just following his father. His father told him what to do. He's going along with him, but yet they walked together. They went together, one mind. Avraham Shlei, they meet us Ahava Levad. Avraham saw that through the quality of love alone, Lo Yuchal Lama B'Israel, he couldn't go through this test. But this Baal Shem Tov as the Baal Shem Tov says, should not lo imanu oz as kol madrigosam. All of his levels were taken from him at that time. Al ken hutzrach lekachas la'atzmo gamas midas shel Yitzchak midas hayira. Therefore, he had to attach himself to the quality of Yitzchak, the quality of fear of God and of strength, of gevura. Through this power of Yitzchak tied to his, he could get through this test of the Akedah. That again, it's written, they walked together. Avraham Avinu as Atzma B'Yidaso Yitzchak. Avraham bound himself to the qualities of Yitzchak. And that's what is written. Ki ati yadati, Hashem says, now I know, Kirei Hashem ata, that you fear God. Shalachura. Lomer ki oev Hashem ata, Elokim ata. It should say, now I know that you love God instead you fear God. Avram Avinu, Haymidas Ahava, because Avraham had the quality of love. El HaPerush, Shema She'amad B'Nisayan, Haymekoach Zeh. What it means is that the only way he withstood this test of the Akedah was through the power of Yira, fear and reverence of God. Sheklal es atzmo imidas Yira. He bound himself together with the quality of reverence and fear of God of Yitzchak. Uvapam Hasheni, the second time, Kasi Vayomer Avram Hashem Yira Lo Haseh the Olavani. Then when Yitzchak asks this question, I see the fire, I see the wood, but where's the animal? And he says, don't worry, God will provide. God will provide the animal. And then he understood what was going to happen. He was going to be the animal. But again, it says they walked together. This was after it was known to Yitzchak what was going to happen. And it teaches that even his own quality of fear of God alone wasn't strong enough to go through the test. So similarly, Yitzchak had to connect with the quality of love of his father Avraham. And after the Akedah Kesiv, again, the same wording, they walked together. He returned to the lads. Remember that he left Yishmael and his servant Eliezer down below. He didn't bring them up to the Akedah. So now he's returning. Nisora hasatam achreinu. I skipped a line, sorry. Yonad achar shekvar niskayim after it already came to pass that they removed the Satan, the Yetzer Hora from before him, the Yetzer Hora was not successful in keeping him from fulfilling the command of God. She's Gabriel's Atzmo, she's Gabriel Avinu, sorry, Ala Satan Ami B'Nisayim. Yet Avraham Avinu was strong and withstood the test. Now the Satan, now the Satan is waking up to try to impede and impair things from behind after the deed is done. Yetzer Hora misgaber l'achar nisayin v'asiyasa, but for the Yetzer Hora that comes is very strong after somebody has done a mitzvah and successfully passed the test. Yetzer Hora, v'kivan shayei nisayin kadosh kol kach, since this was such a holy test. Nityare Avraham pen yisgaber alav Yetzer Hora ata. Since this was such a holy test that he and Yitzchak were able to accomplish, he was afraid that the Yetzer Hora might take over now. V'yulo peniot sochot hadas b'mashapol inyan niskav kol kach, that they be arrogant and proud about what they've just done. Mizendis yare Avraham Avinu b'yoter achar Akedah. And he was much more worried about this after the Akedah. Ki b'nisayon hazeh, who he gabros esatim ba'ofen shlom atzinu dugmos b'tishas and nisyonos hakodemis, because the negative power of the Yetzer Hora at this point was stronger than it had been in any of the previous 9 tests of Avraham Avinu. Kivan sh'nisayon ha'akedah, because the test of the Akedah, who yesod kiyomo sh'am Yisrael, this was the foundation by which Am Yisrael would live, would exist. Machar nisayon iloi kol kach hashash Avraham Avinu pen yavo mizeh lifnius makshavos shepal mashu ayadezeh. He was worried that because of the holiness of this thing, he would become arrogant and think how wonderful it is that he did this thing, in which case the entire mitzvah, as we showed with the two brothers and the Mezritcha Magid, would be like throwing it off into the ball into the water, to the deepest depths. L'kach, and therefore, Kiyum v'yashav Avraham, he got up and he went, returned El Na'arav to the lads. V'kumu v'yalchi Yaakov, and they got up, they walked together. What does that mean? Shenar chayma od shivurim b'kirbon mizeh. These lads were very broken up. Both Yishmael and Eliezer, they were broken up. Shebesamuch alehem nasta avoda elad kazu, that near to them, such a horrible thing would have happened. Behem nisharo l'sheves, and they were left behind imachamor with the donkey. Vayishivron libam gadol ma'od, their brokenheartedness was so great, their despair, their fright was so great. Va'ad kan, va'akach v'yikumu v'yach yaktov, they went together, meaning Shavram Avinu lakach amu as shivron halev shanara. Avram adopted, took into himself, empathized with their brokenheartedness. Kadesh lo yavo l'zchus hadas, not so they shouldn't become arrogant. Velula the mispino hayap of api lamad apiza inyan vatoma sora, and you can't connect this and say this is the reason that Sora died. Shalachar Shora Satan. Avraham Avinu Iskaber Gamal Yisrael Hazeh. When the Satan, Yetzer Hora, saw that Avraham didn't fall to his entreaties and was able to go through this test, Chaval Tachbala Hadasha Kadei Lahashilo, the Satan came up with a new plan to cause him to stumble. Shedah Satan, Satan knew Ki Hagia Zamanu Shel Sora Lisalik Beolam. Satan knew that this was the time preordained from the time Sarah was born for her to die at this moment. This was the particular time. He knew that she would be dying. She was destined to die at this time. V'savav kach shagia zemano yisraelo shenizdamim bana l'shchita v'chumat shlo nishchas. So we thought this would be a good time to say that your son was brought up to the Akedah and was almost sacrificed, and Uparcha Dishmasa would look like she died because of that news. Bezos Kadei she Yachshavu called her Olam. This was so the whole world would think, Avraham Avinu, Sheporcha Dishmasa Machmas Besoras Akedah, that she died because of hearing about the Akedah. This was the collateral damage, and the Satan is trying to impress. This is the collateral damage you caused, Avraham, by doing this test. You should have done it. She'd still be living, which of course wasn't the case. Kedela Babelas Avraham Avinu, to confuse him. Sheyidag v'yizcharit amasev, that he'd worry about and have second thoughts about what he did. V'yu bebechinas tohu al maseim tovim sha'asa. This is the aspect of wondering about the good things that you have done. Acho emasi, but the truth is, Shelo nistalku be'emtzi yomim. She didn't die in the midst of her life. These were the specific days that were designed when she was born. This is the number of years she was going to live. She was going to die on that particular day. That was the time that the days that were predetermined came about, and she was supposed to die at that point. Torah, and this is why the Torah writes, "Vayu Chayei Sarah meya shana v'yesrim shana v'sheva shanim shemnimnu shnei chayei," to count the years of her life. Lomer, to say, "Shizeh hayazman hakatzuv la lichios," to teach that this was the time predestined for her to. This was the time she was supposed to live. But kafel omer shnei chayei Sarah, the doubling of the language. These are the lives of Sarah lahadgesh sheilu hayashanim hakatzuos lechaya. That these were the exact time that she was supposed to live. Af lo rega Echad yoter mizeh, and 1 second wasn't taken from this. Chomer Chazal, as the sages say, Ad shalosh chika shimsha shel Sarah, until the sun of Sarah set, meaning the time she died. Till that time, Zorcha shimsha shel Rivka, did the son of Rivka shine. As Sarah died at that same moment, Rivka was born. Hainu shoyu ketsuvim b'diyuk regaya chaim. This was specifically the period of her life. L'kach nisvacha parshas misa Sarah l'Akedat Yitzak, and that's why the parsha of Sarah is near the Akedat Yitzak. Nasata rasa shiyu nira ki'ilu nistalka b'Sarah Akedah, because the Satan wanted people to think that she died because of the news of the Akedah. Avraham Avinu amad gam b'Yisayim hazeh, but Avraham didn't fall for this. He withstood this test too. And this is why it says he mourned for the word of Yivka, crying was with a small cough. And as he cried for her like you would over an elderly person who dies. He wasn't crying about somebody who's chas v'shalom involved in a terrible tragedy and died because of that tragedy. God forbid a person dies halfway through their life. He withstood this test. Having he understood. Shizel was man shohaiset tzrichelis talko, mean, oh, this was the time that she was destined to leave this world. And her dying had nothing to do with hearing the news of the Akedah. The Isha Khan, it says in the Zohar, the Isha Khan lahedya shigzeres misas Sora nigzera kvar ba'is hamishta asher asa Avraham b'yom hagabel es Yitzchak. The Zohar says this time was determined at the time she weaned Yitzchak. But so either it was that time or before, but certainly it was way before this event happened. Because remember, Yitzchak was 37, so it was a time it was weaned. That would have been what, 2 years old, I think, was the normal time. This Torah teaches a Jew, the Yetzer Hora is before you and after you've done the deed. Many tests try to keep you from doing a mitzvah. Or trying to turn away the Yetzer Hora is trying to fall for your desires. You have to be strong and pass the test. But not only are you faced with these impediments in completing this test before you, but also dealing with what you've done afterwards so that you don't become arrogant about it or think that this produced some collateral damage of sorts. Yetzer is trying to test you again. He's saying that really what you did really was against God's wills or other reasons. With these kinds of trickery that the Yetzer Hora is trying to pull on you, you can chas v'sholem fall into a situation where you've regretted what you've done. You regretted the mitzvah that you've done. Torah teaches us, Shigam Zehu B'Chabolot HaYetzer. These are the tricks of the Yetzer Hora. Just like he wanted to confuse Avraham Avinu with these kinds of thoughts. Avraham didn't fall for us. Avraham Avinu withstood all of these attempts before and after he did the mitzvah. All of this teaches a Jew how to overcome all of the tests in your life. We can explain this also as it says in Tehillim. God will save the poor person from those that are stronger than him, and he'll save the person from his enemy and robber. Ein ani al badas. The word poor only means the intellect. God saves the ani, the poor person, from somebody stronger than him. Yetzer Hora. God will save you from the Yetzer Hora that is so strong. And he will save you, you'll be able to withstand and pass this test and overcome your desires for arrogance or any other negative feelings that the Yetzer Hora brings about. Means that after you've already withstood this test, these gaber al tavaso zumam Yetzer Hora legzol mimenu masha hasikvar. So you have to be aware the Yetzer Hora is always coming to try to steal from you the level that you've accomplished. God will save you from this. The Satan that is behind us. This Satan will not steal from you the good that you have done. And I think that's a really interesting concept. We don't normally think of that. I think this Yetzer Hora, these negative thoughts, negative energy, is only going to keep us from doing the mitzvah. We don't think that the negative aspect, the Yetzer Hora, is still trying after the mitzvah, doesn't give up to say, make you think, wow, double think yourself, second think yourself, having second thoughts. Did I do the right thing? Maybe this is what caused this. Maybe had I not done this, those are the tricks of the Yetzer Hora to get you to diminish in your mind and to diminish the actual value of the mitzvah that you've done. We've said many, many times, if you have emunah pshuta, a simple emunah, you don't ask questions. You understand that it's all for good. So I'm going to turn it, I thank you for listening. I'm going to turn the recording off now. Just a moment.